What's up guys, ThyUltimateGamer here to record another video, and this time we'll be doing another episode of a series called ThyUltimateGamer Reviews, where I'll be reviewing some of my games on my PlayStation 3 collection, where I'll be talking about gameplay, presentation, the verdict, and otherwise. And today we're going to be doing Dead Space 2 Limited Edition on the PlayStation 3. Now this came out as of February 2013. It comes with Dead Space Extraction, and also a PlayStation Move compatible title is available. This game is set 3 years after the event of the first Dead Space, which follows the protagonist Isaac Clarke after he's against a new necromorph outbreak on the Sprawl, Saturn, a space station against the largest moon. Dead Space 2 has a multiplayer mode, but unfortunately the multiplayer sucks. But let's get on to Dead Space 2 review. So, the gameplay of Dead Space 2 takes the control player of Isaac Clarke from a third-person perspective, so like Gears of War. Looking over the character's right shoulder, as in the previous game, he uses our RIG suit, which stands for Resource Integration Gear. And during the early of the game, Isaac requires a stasis mode, which allows him to slow down enemies and otherwise passing moving objects, heavy machinery. Also allowed Isaac to pass through safely, which he can also carry and fire objects telekinetically. He can also upgrade his weapons and armor at workbenches using power nodes, making upgrading your weapons for firepower, accuracy, and much more. And there are some puzzles are required in this game, so they're not that hard, but they are time consuming. So you really have to pay attention to what you do. Unlike in the first games, Isaac must fight necromorphs, organisms and take control of human corpses. To take on necromorphs, he must use a strategic disembowelment. In other words, such as slicing off limbs of necromorphs' bodies, such as the head, the torso, the arms, and the legs. For example, he can also shoot a slash of necromorph in the head. Has a little effect, but however, it can be stopped by shooting its arms off. Depending on how they are wounded, necromorphs like the pregnant and the ubermorph can adopt new stances and tactics, even new limps of spawning more enemies in the process of a lever. Now, Dead Space 2's main campaign contains 5 difficulty levels, which are Casual, Normal, Survivalist, Zealot, and Hardcore. Now, Hardcore is unlocked once the game has been completed on any difficulty, playable from a fresh start, so you won't be able to keep all your upgrades. Hardcore limits the player to 3 saves the entire campaign. Item drops are very difficult to find, enemies are challenging, and checkpoints are very absent. So, let's talk about the plot. So the game begins with Isaac Clarke in an asylum. He's in a densely populated space station surrounded by a shard of Titan and one of Saturn's moons. Isaac Clarke awakens with no memory of the past 3 years since the Aegis 7, having just been awoken by Franco, who is attempting to free him. The already ongoing necromorph outbreak claims Franco's life, leaving Isaac to escape his very own. He is contacted by Diana Ligoon, a woman claiming to have a cure for his condition. He is also contacted by a fellow patient, Nolan Strauss, from Dead Space Aftermath, who endured a treatment similar to Isaac's. She explains that Sprawl Administrator Hans Tinman is building a new marker using information to encode Isaac and Strauss's brain. She also claims that a self-replicating signal was imprinted on Isaac's mind by his previous encounter with the Maker, putting his life in grave danger. Strauss contacts Ivis, claiming that they can destroy the Maker, telling him the location is located under Sprawl's government sector. With no choice, Isaac decides to trust him in the first place. As he makes his way there, Isaac comes across Ellie, who is a CEC pilot who eventually joins their mission. As they travel through the Sprawl, they encounter several obstacles caused by Tendermen and the necromorphs, eventually forcing Isaac to venture back into the Hiroshima, which is docked at the Sprawl of decontamination and repair after the events of the first Dead Space. Eventually, Strauss's dementia worsens, causing him to gouge out Ellie's eye out, spoiler, with the screwdriver. And without further ado, let's talk about the reception for Dead Space 2. Now, Dead Space 2 has been very well received among game critics such as Game Rankings, Metacritic, OneUp.com, Edge, GameFormer, GameSpot, GamesRadar, Game Trailers, IGN, Official Xbox Magazine, And Dead Space 2 is a phenomenal game. It is the predecessor of the first Dead Space. This is one of the best survival horror games from Capcom, in my opinion. Definitely one of my favorite games of the year for 2011. It has high replay value. Single player is great. There's about 16, 17 chapters long, depending on your difficulty. There are times where you go into an abandoned room, and once you go into that room, you'll see a necromorph popping out of a closet or out of a door or on the floor from the ceiling, and they'll just start coming rampaging you. And sometimes you have to be very careful with your ammo, because when you play on a hard difficulty, you have to consume your ammo and try not to blast necromorphs limb by limb. You have to really pay close attention to what's surrounding you. So Dead Space 2 is a fantastic survival horror game developed by Capcom, who is responsible for Resident Evil, Mega Man, Bionic Commando, Asura's Wrath, and Street Fighter. Dead Space 2 is I would say it's a bit better than the first Dead Space, but the atmospheric feel to Dead Space 2 is truly spectacular to look at. The visuals are very good, the voice acting is good, soundtrack is amazing, guys. If you have not heard a single soundtrack from Dead Space 2, I highly suggest you go listen to one of the songs from the Dead Space 2 official soundtrack. It will blow your fucking mind off. Now, Dead Space 2, I would say, is very, very good. Sometimes it gets repetitive at certain times, but other than that, Dead Space 2 was very enjoyable, very fun, addicting. There's a different variety of weapons you can choose from, such as the plasma cutter, the flamethrower, and the plasma rifle. Overall, this is a must-own for any survival horror fans or the fans of the first one. Overall, I would give Dead Space 2 a 9.5 out of 10. It is a fantastic game, must-own for survival horror games fans, must-own for fans of the original Dead Space. I heard Dead Space 3 was good, but not as great as the first two. This one, it was more of a survival horror, and while Dead Space 3 kind of turned into a survival action, third-person shooter perspective, but Dead Space 2 was a fantastic game. Great atmosphere, great music, great voice acting. This game is really good, so I give it a 9.5 out of 10. I highly recommend this game if you haven't gotten the chance. You can find this game for pretty cheap, and this is the limited edition. It comes with Dead Space Extraction, which you have to download it separately. You can't go onto PlayStation Network. Well, you can, but once you pop it to the disc, it'll come into a meter, and you'll say Dead Space Extraction. It's an okay game. It doesn't really follow much of the campaign story from Dead Space 2, but let's talk about the multiplayer before we end this video. Now, multiplayer is first introduced in the game, and to be quite honest with you guys, it's not that great. There are several different modes you can choose from. It's not that entertaining to see. Stick with the campaign. You'll get worth your time and money. And overall, Dead Space 2 is a highly recommended, one of my anticipated games for 2011. I will be getting Dead Space 3 soon. Let you guys know what my thoughts and my opinions were for this game. Overall, Dead Space 2, must own. I approve this game. Fantastic survival horror elements. Kind of reminded me of the old Resident Evil style, if they would ever go back to that kind of style. Dead Space 2, again, great atmosphere, great soundtrack, great voice acting. I give it a 9.5 out of 10. Highly recommend this game. And that, you guys, is my review for Dead Space 2 for the PlayStation 3. If you guys enjoyed this video, smack that like button, comment, and subscribe. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to you later, and be on the lookout for more videos right here on my YouTube channel.